Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. This time we're heading to Oz, but not just for a casual visit.
No, no.
We're going deep into some feminist interpretations of The Wizard of Oz.
And of course, no exploration of Oz and feminism would be complete without a look at Wicked, too.
Right. The Gregory Maguire novel. We've got this great academic text that dives into both Baum's classic and Maguire's, more modern take.
It really helps unpack how each story, being written in such different times, reflects the changing views on women and women's power, too.
Exactly. And get this, we'll be looking at how Dorothy, Dorothy from Kansas, could actually be considered an early feminist icon.
Fascinating, isn't it?
And the Wicked Witch of the West. Well, her wickedness might have more to do with society being afraid of powerful women than anything she actually does.
That's a really interesting point. It's all about looking beneath the surface.
Right. So let's start with Oz itself, the setting.
Okay.
How did both Baum and Maguire use this magical world to kind of comment on the real-world dynamics between men and women?
You can almost imagine Oz as like a distorted reflection of the societies where these books were written.
Okay.
Baum, back in the early 1900s, he was writing during the whole women's suffrage movement.
Right.
And his mother-in-law, a big-time suffragette, really influenced him. So even though The Wizard of Oz might seem like a simple children's story on the surface, it actually pushes back against traditional gender roles.
I see.
And then Maguire, writing Wicked much later in the 20th century, he kind of takes these ideas and amplifies them.
So he's making a more direct statement.
Yes, more of a direct critique about what's expected of women.
Yeah, this is where Dorothy comes in.
Exactly.
She's not just skipping down that yellow brick road.
No, not at all. She's remarkable, especially for a book written in 1900.
How so?
Her agency.
Oh.
Women couldn't even vote back then. And Baum creates this young female character who's driving the entire plot.
Wow.
She's not waiting around for a prince to rescue her. She's making decisions, solving problems, leading a group of men, no less.
Leading the whole group.
It's amazing when you think about it.
And it's not even about power for her.
Right.
She just wants to go home, back to Kansas.
That's her motivation. Loyalty to her family, this deep sense of belonging, not power or riches.
That really flips the script, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Most hero narratives back then, all about conquest, glory, totally male-centric.
And Dorothy's strength comes from, wanting to go home.
Exactly. And that's Baum. Maguire takes it further. He digs into female ambition, the backlash women face when they challenge the norm. But we'll get to that.
I'm hooked already. But, okay, we can't talk Oz without talking about, the witches.
Right, the witches.
How do they fit into this feminist reading?
Well, Glinda and the Witch of the North being portrayed as powerful, good witches.
Yeah.
That was a big deal back then. Think about it, especially in children's literature. Witches are usually the bad guys.
The villain.
Exactly. But these good witches are wise leaders, using their magic to help people protect them.
That's a far cry from the typical, cackling, wart-nosed witch.
Right. And you start to wonder if Baum was consciously trying to change how we see powerful women.
Maybe he was.
Yeah.
And then you have the Wicked Witch of the West, the ultimate bad woman.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Green, mean, wants those ruby slippers.
But could there be more to her wickedness?
Is there?
Think about the cultural fear surrounding powerful women back then, early 1900s.
Okay.
Women who wanted power, especially in public roles, they were seen as dangerous, unnatural, and the Wicked Witch, she's ugly, cruel. It plays into that fear.
Like Baum saying, this is what happens when women get power. They turn green and melt you with water.
It's funny, but it does highlight how anxious people were about women's empowerment.
Makes sense. And even with Glinda being good and powerful, Baum still kind of limits how women are depicted. Good or evil. No middle ground.
Exactly, black and white. And Dorothy, even with all her independence, she ends up back in Kansas in that domestic role. Progressive for its time, but still reflecting those limits on women.
Right.
Which is why Wicked is so interesting. Maguire really challenges those limitations head on.
I can't wait to get into Wicked.
We'll dive in right after this.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about how The Wizard of Oz, even a story like that,
Yeah.
it reflects all that anxiety around powerful women back then.
It was fascinating. Really makes you think.
And now we get to Gregory Maguire's Wicked.
Yes.
He takes those subtle hints from Baum and just runs with them.
He does.
Creates this whole story that really challenges what society expects from women.
And celebrates those who don't fit in.
Exactly. And at the center of it all is Elphaba.
Wicked Witch.
The Wicked Witch, but reimagined.
Right, not just a one-dimensional villain.
No, not at all. Maguire wants us to understand why she's wicked.
Okay, interesting.
He shows us how society rejects her, punishes her for being different.
For being smart, strong.
For daring to question things.
It's like she represents all those women throughout history who were punished for being themselves.
That's a great point.
For not fitting into those boxes society tries to put them in.
And Maguire uses her green skin for that.
Oh yeah, she's green from birth.
It's like a visual metaphor for being different, for being an outsider.
A symbol of how women are marginalized when they don't conform.
Exactly. And she refuses to play the role she's supposed to play.
She doesn't try to fit in.
She doesn't. And that's ultimately why she's labeled wicked.
So wickedness is actually a form of resistance.
In a lot of ways, yes.
Interesting.
It's about rejecting those limited options for women in Oz.
Right, like she's supposed to be more like Glinda.
Exactly, more acceptable.
But she refuses.
She refuses to compromise who she is, what she believes.
Oh,
That's what makes her a feminist anti-heroine.
an anti-hero.
She doesn't fit that typical good female character mold. She's complex, she's flawed.
And she fights dirty.
Sometimes, yes. She does what she has to do.
That makes her relatable.
Right. She's not perfect, she makes mistakes.
She's real.
But she never gives up fighting for a better world.
Speaking of that fight, what is she fighting against?
Well, in Maguire's Oz the Wizard, he's corrupt.
Corrupt how?
Authoritarian, controlling, he's oppressing the animals, taking away their rights.
The animals can't speak up for themselves.
Right, and Elphaba sees that injustice, and she can't stay silent.
She puts herself at risk to fight for them.
She does, and that adds another dimension to her wickedness.
It's not about power for herself.
No, it's about fighting for those who can't fight back.
Very powerful.
And it connects with a lot of feminist ideas about challenging oppression, fighting for social justice.
Elphaba is an activist.
Exactly. She shows us that one voice can speak truth to power.
Even when it's dangerous.
But her relationship with power is complicated.
How so?
She's not afraid to use it, but she struggles with the ethics of it.
It's not always black and white.
No, she makes tough choices. She has to face the consequences.
And that makes her even more human.
Right. She's not just a symbol. She's a real person with flaws and doubts.
Makes you really connect with her.
And of course, we can't forget Glinda.
Oh, their relationship.
It's one of the most fascinating parts of Wicked.
I mean, it's like Maguire took that old idea of women always competing with each other
Right.
and just threw it out the window.
He did. Instead, you have Elphaba and Glinda, completely different.
Yeah, but they develop a real bond.
A bond built on respect and understanding.
They support each other, challenge each other.
And they find strength in their differences.
It's amazing. You know, Glinda, she's all pink and perfect, the good girl.
Following all the rules.
And Elpha's the rebel, questions everything.
It's like they represent the two paths women are often given.
And they show us that you don't have to choose one or the other.
You can be yourself, messy and complex, and still find support.
Such a great message.
It's all about solidarity, women supporting women.
Defying those patriarchal structures that try to divide them.
Exactly. But there's another layer here, too, about power dynamics.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
Well, think about Glinda's position.
She's popular, powerful.
She benefits from the same system that's hurting Elphaba.
Whoa, I didn't think about it like that.
Glinda's on the inside, Elphaba's on the outside.
It's easy to talk about sisterhood, but sometimes there's an imbalance.
Right. And Wicked doesn't ignore that.
No, it doesn't.
Glinda has to face her own privilege, realize how she benefits from Elphaba's exclusion.
Wow, that's a really important point.
It's central to her growth, to their friendship.
Their relationship becomes this microcosm of the bigger issues.
Exactly. They show us the real struggles, the complexities of female friendship.
In a world that tries to turn women against each other?
And Maguire doesn't shy away from those tough conversations.
No, he doesn't.
He makes us look beyond good and evil, think about the real issues.
Issues of gender, power, social justice.
It's what makes Wicked such a powerful story.
This deep dive is amazing. I'm seeing everything in a new light.
Me too. It's all about asking the right questions, analyzing through a feminist lens.
And there's so much more to uncover.
We've only just scratched the surface.
That dynamic between Elphaba and Glinda, it really sticks with you.
It does, doesn't it?
They each had such different approaches to challenging the wizard.
It makes you think about how we fight for what we believe in.
Right. Like, is it better to work within the system?
Trying to change things from the inside.
Or do you go head on and risk everything?
That's a question that goes way beyond Oz.
It does, doesn't it? A real dilemma.
A debate that's been going on in feminist thought for ages.
Like trying to fix a broken system or just tear the whole thing down.
And Wicked shows us both sides through Elphaba and Glinda.
Right. Elphaba, she's all about that direct confrontation.
Passionate activism, willing to put herself out there.
She's like a force of nature.
But it comes at a price, like we saw.
She's called wicked. She's isolated.
Makes you wonder, how much can one person really achieve?
Especially when the powerful people have all the control.
It's a good question.
Maybe sometimes a more subtle approach works better.
And that's where Glinda comes in.
Right. She's working within the system.
Using her position, her influence.
Trying to change things quietly.
Like a long game, chipping away at the power structure.
And she does have some success.
She protects Elphaba sometimes, even influences public opinion.
But slow, right.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder.
Can you really dismantle a system by working within it?
Or do you just become part of the problem?
It's that tension, that dilemma, and Wicked doesn't give us easy answers.
No, it doesn't.
It shows us the complexity, the good and the bad of both sides.
It makes you think. Like there's no one right way to fight for justice.
It's messy, it's complicated.
And Wicked really embraces that. It's what makes it such a great story.
It makes you think critically, doesn't it?
It does. And Oz itself, it's like this metaphor.
A place to explore these big ideas about power, gender, social change.
But in a fun, engaging way.
That's the power of storytelling.
It sparks these important conversations.
Makes us question our assumptions.
Wow, this deep dive has been incredible.
I agree.
I see The Wizard of Oz, Wicked, totally differently now.
Me too. And we've only just begun to explore these ideas.
Right. There are so many other ways to look at these stories.
So many feminist interpretations out there.
This is just a starting point.
An invitation to keep digging deeper.
If you're interested in learning more, check out Feminist Literary Criticism.
It's a whole field dedicated to analyzing texts through this lens.
Once you start seeing things this way, you can't stop.
It's true. It opens up a whole new world.
Well, that about wraps up our journey through Oz.
It does.
But we want to leave you with something to think about.
Something to ponder.
Imagine yourself in Oz.
Would you be more like Elphaba?
Fighting head-on, risking it all for your beliefs.
Or more like Glinda, working strategically from within?
Or maybe like the best feminist icons.
You'd find a way to do both.
Because the fight for justice needs all kinds of voices, all kinds of approaches.
Correct.
That's such a good point.
There's no one right answer.
It's about finding your own way to make a difference.
And the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Absolutely.
So keep questioning, keep challenging.
Keep fighting for a better world.
That's it for this deep dive, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.